I'm Lily, and welcome to the second part of my Ravnica Allegiance Set review. Today we're going to be looking at black and red cards. Not Rakdos, that's a different episode. I think that's the last episode will include Rakdos, but the mono black and the mono red cards. If you want to know more about how I'm evaluating this, I'd recommend going back and watching my first video, which should be around somewhere in the playlist this is in. If you're watching this right as it releases, it's the last video I put out. You'll be able to find it. But yeah, go back there. But in general, I'm mostly evaluating these cards for limited, primarily draft, but also sealed because pre-release is a thing and coming up pretty soon. Before we go, I realized I didn't actually take down. I don't really hide it and then bring it back up. Well, I guess we had the card here from the beginning. So first up we have Awaken the Erstwhile, which is a 5-mana sorcery with each player discards all the cards in their hand, then creates that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. I don't think this is good. This is just bad. Mass discard spells are great. Because, okay, what are the two things? If it was just each player discards their entire hand. That was a card in one of the Ravnica blocks sets before this. Okay, that's cool, because you could plan for it. You'd be like, okay, let me just dump my hand. Let's make sure nothing's in my hand. And then I get to hit my opponent, and everyone discards their heart, and I hit my opponent harder for them than they hit me. Okay, but the alternative is, okay, this one's also, it's I don't want to play cards so I can discard my other cards to make 2/2 zombies. But my opponent, at best, you hit your opponent for a few cards, but they get zombies if you're trying to hit their hand. On your side of things, you're trading cards for bears, but this is late game, and you're also spending a card to turn all the cards in your hand into bears. It's just, both sides of that seem bad. And also on top of that, you're spending a card to do that, as well as your opponent also gets cards, because it's not likely that your opponent's could be hellbent. So I just don't see what this card is for at all. Yeah. Sorry, Erstwhile. Golgari is still bad even in this set. Next we have Bankrupt in Blood, which is 1 black for sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice 2 creatures. Draw 3 cards. It's a powerful effect, and you'll see other things which have sacrifice creatures, and there is kind of a sacrifice sub-theme. Active treason is a common in this set, so that is there. But the sacrifice 2 creatures is just, this is not Blood Divination. Blood Divination had it was 4 mana for this effect, but you only have to sacrifice 1 creature to draw 3 cards. Having to sacrifice 2 creatures is very rough and a really big price and limited. Without any proper token creators or things like that. No, even the Orzhov deck, which might have more creatures going around and they blow up in the spirit tokens and things like that. Bankrupt in Black otherwise. It's awesome art, but I'm not looking toward this. This isn't the kind of card draw I want. Blade Juggler, which is a 5-mana 3/2 with our first of the Rakdos mechanic, which is Spectacle, which if opponent has lost life, if you've hit them or any other effects, there's lots of Spectacle enablers, which I'll talk about. You get to cast it for a Spectacle cost. Sometimes the cost is more and you get additional effects, but a lot of the time, especially for these common ones, it'll just be it cheapens the card. But this is when it enters battlefield, it deals 1 damage to you, and you draw a card. Okay, at 5 mana, do I want to play 5 mana for a 3/2 to draw a card? And honestly, I'm pretty fine with that. Yeah, it's below rate, but it replaces itself, and 5 mana isn't that bad, and if you can, just go 2-drop, hit them, turn 3, play this for the spectacle cost, that's really nice. So, I really like Blade Juggler. It's 3/2 draw card, 5 mana 3/2 draw card. I'm fine with that, and the fact that sometimes it can just be a 3 mana 3/2 that replaces itself is really cool. Next we have Blade Brant, which is 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature gains Death's Touch until end of turn. Draw a card. You know, as combat tricks go, I don't mind this. Like, oftentimes it won't help you win combats, but it will, especially if you're having like troublesome like Gruul or like large Rakdos creatures, it can help like Orzhov take care of those. Although Orzhov shouldn't have trouble taking care of them. But it also does just replace itself, so that's nice. And yeah, I don't mind this at all. It's not a bad card. Just like the fact that its opportunity cost is very low, because it's at the very least it's 2 mana to cycle it, and that's not bad at all. Next up we have Blood Mist Infiltrator, which is a 3 mana 3/1, and when it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, it cannot be blocked this turn. Okay, like I see what like it is like 3 mana 3/1s. I'm really not into. Like I'm not into 2 mana 3/1s. And the thing is that unless you're like attacking and like sacrificing a creature to get in, this thing isn't doing anything. Like it can't. It just is so fragile and so weak. And like Orzhov isn't looking to beat down in a white weenie strategy. Like I could see it maybe if you really need to enable spectacle. Like okay, I sacrifice a creature when it gets in. I do my damage and get that. There's honestly better ways to do that. Like if I'm sacrificing a creature to do an effect, I want that effect to be very good. And this is not a very good effect on an otherwise unplayable creature. So, I mean, no, I'm just not into Blood Mist Infiltrator. Sorry. Carrion Imp. It is a 4 mana 2/3 flyer, and when it enters battlefield, you may exile target creature card from a graveyard. If you do, gain 2 life. Well, I mean, 4 mana 2/3 flyer, I'm not huge on, but flyers, I think, like we'll talk about in the white and black, white and blue set review, flyers are going to be very important, both like Afterlife and the number of flyers we saw there. So sometimes just having a 2/3 flyer is just useful to have. And you know what? By turn 4, and like sometimes it won't gain you 2 life, but most of the time it will gain you 2 life. And I mean, the utility of exiling a creature from a graveyard isn't wonderful, but the fact that sometimes it'll just give you 2 extra life means this isn't bad. I don't think this is an amazing 4-drop, but it's not bad. Next is Catacomb Crocodile, which is a 5 mana 3/7. I don't know. I think the closest thing you can kind of think of like, oh, it's kind of like Wishcoin Crab from Guilds, which was 4 mana for a 2/5, and that was a very good card. It ended up being very good, but Guilds was a lot more of a ground-based fight, and just based on the cards we've seen, Allegiance seems like it's fought in the air, and like a big body like this, like that's an impressive body. But at 5 mana, I want to be doing more for 5 mana, and you know, if like Gruul, the ground creature, the thing is like even for the Gruul ground creatures, this will block them maybe, but it won't kill them. Like we're not dealing with like Selesnya and Boros where like this thing could just eat up those creatures. So I'm not huge on Catacomb Crocodile, but kind of like Wishcoin Crab, which no one expected to be like as amazing as it was. I could see myself being wrong, but on my initial assessment of the crab creatures, I'm like kind of looking for this after the surprise that was Wishcoin Crab. I just don't like it. I don't think it's gonna be good. Next we have Clear the Stage, which is a 5 mana instant. Target creature gains -3/-3 until end of turn. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may return 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so this is a lot going on. Okay, when I pay 5 mana for -3/-3 until end of turn at instant speed, and that's a bit overcosted. Like normally your 5 mana removal in black, you're usually just outright killing a creature. But so I would say like, but that said, also it's like in limited you want your removal, and this isn't bad removal, and you know what, if you get that second side of that, that's essentially you're drawing a card off that, and that's real nice. So I'd say like if you're in Rakdos, this is very good. Orzhov is less likely to have the big creatures, so it maybe doesn't want this as much. But for Rakdos, this seems like an exceptional card. And you know what? If you just have to pay it for 5 mana, -3/-3, so be it. Like, it'll kill a lot of things. If nothing else, it can help you like definitely win you a combat if you need to. And just better, like, if you can have that upside, it becomes very nice. Consigned the Pit. This is a 6 mana sorcery that has destroyed your creature. Consigned the Pit deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. This is your common black removal. It's one of those ones where it's like, it's not amazing removal. It's not instant speed. It's 6 mana, but you'll take it and you'll be happy with it. Like, I don't think it's as good as Deadly Visit, because like the Surveil 2 was very nice. That was only 5 mana. But it's also only single costed, so it's like, it is not impossible to splash for if you're like in like Gruul or one of these other ones that just like kind of needs a little bit more removal. Or Azorius I could see also needing, using something like this. So it's actually not terrible to splash for. And also, like, the 2 damage creatures controller is nice. It doesn't really help you for, like, spectacle costs, because you're already paying 6 mana for this, and you really can't pay for other spectacle cards at that point. But you'll be happy with this. Like, you'll have, like, your 5, like, every set has your 5 and 6 mana black removal spell, and they're almost always just a staple of limited, and this is it, and it's no different. Next we have Cry of the Carnarium, which is a 1 black for sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Exile all creatures in all graveyards that were put there from this turn. From the battlefield this turn. If a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So it's kind of like, it's one of those like mass, like, we've seen a lot of the, okay, 3 mana, give all creatures -2/-2, and then this one has some exile stuff, which isn't super relevant in this set, except for the fact that this does exile afterlife creatures, so afterlife never actually triggers, which is relevant if you're playing against a creature deck with those on it. Granted, you are in black, so it also affects your afterlife creatures, which is important to note. But none of the guilds are really doing much graveyard shenanigans, so exiling things isn't super useful. And so it comes down to, it's like, do either the black decks care about the -2/-2? The Orzhov deck does not want this at all. Like, that kills all of their spirits, that kills all of their, whatchamacallit, it kills, like, it disables a lot of their afterlife creatures and things like that. That said, does the Rakdos deck want this? I don't think particularly. I could see it as definitely being a good sideboard card if, like, sideboarding in against Orzhov specifically. But I don't think either of the decks really want this. And of course, like, it's a situational wipe, but the thing is, it's only really wiping the Orzhov deck because it's like, the Azorius deck is full of big butts. Simic will have, like, big things, like, unless you're, like, playing this, like, very early game, the Simic stuff will quickly outclass this. And the Gruul stuff is, well, Gruul stuff, and it's big and giant and stuff. So I just feel like it'll be good in the sideboard, and it'll be good, and it'll just be game ending in those matches, but I don't think it's really what you want to be running. Next we have Dead Revels, which is a 4 mana sorcery with spectacle for 1 and a black. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. I mean, we've seen a lot of these effects. Normally it's 3 mana, but this one's like balanced around, like, oh, you can pay 2 mana if you hit them in the face, or it's 4 mana. And I like this. Like, a lot of these effects are usually pretty good. Just because, I don't know, especially late game, it's like, you know, like, if you don't cast it for its spectacle cost, that's fine. Like, normally you're casting these pretty late game anyway, to just kind of, like, get back and, like, kind of, like, refill your hand, and start playing out stuff again. And, yeah, no. I mean, I wouldn't run more than 2, like, only 2 is even pushing a little bit, but otherwise than that, it seems real solid. Debtors Transport, which is a 6 mana 5/3 with Afterlife 2. I mean, overall, it is 7/5 worth of stats for 6 mana that across 3 creatures. You know, I don't think that's bad. Like, obviously it's a 6 drop, so you don't want too many of them, but that's kind of just like a boring top-end creature. I think you could do worse. Like, it has the stats for what it gives, and it'll trade with something, and then you'll get 2 spirits, and one, like, if you want those like 1/1 payoffs in the air and things like that. So yeah, I don't mind Debtors Transport at all. Like, I'm not amazed by it any means, but it's a passable 6 drop. Drill Bit. It is a 2 and a black for sorcery with spectacle for just 1 black. Target player reveals their hand. May choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. I don't think this is that useful. Like, let's be honest, a lot of these kind of like Thoughtseize effects aren't usually that great and limited. Like, you might bring in, especially for like 3 mana. I'm not wanting to like spend 3 mana for that, and if it's spectacle, okay, it's a little bit better. But yeah, I don't know. Usually, you just don't. You often, because it's not one of those like ones where you're like paying this like turn 1, because you're never getting this turn 1. It's mostly just, okay, later on in the game, when I have 3 mana, I'll Thoughtseize you. But overall, it's just not a fan of these. Like, in the sideboard, bringing in from the sideboard, like if you have a card you know you can't beat, I could see bringing it in maybe, but otherwise I'm not big on Drill Bit. Next we have Font of Agonies, which is 1 black for an enchantment. Whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies. And then you pay 1 and a black. Remove 4 blood counters from Fonts of Agonies. Destroy target creature. This is completely unplayable and limited. You just can't reliably have things that require you to pay life. Just don't play this. It's a cool card, but not unlimited. Next up is Grotesque Demise, which is 3, 2 and a black, 3 mana total, for instant. Exile target creature of power 3 or less. Solid instant speed. It is conditional, but it hits a lot of stuff, and yeah, I mean, it hits all guild mages, it hits a lot of the early Simic stuff, it really hits all the Orzhov stuff, because it turns off Afterlife. A lot of the Orzoria stuff is small butts and things like that, and yeah, it's just overall, I mean, it's Reaver Ambush, but with a different name. It's like a solid removal spell. At common, too. Next up we have Gutter Bones, which is 1 black for a 2/1 skeleton warrior that enters battlefield tapped. You pay 1 and a black to return Gutter Bones from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your turn and only if an opponent lost life this turn. So it's kind of like a reassembling skeleton, but with kind of like a spectacle type effect on it. And you know what, I like this. Like, it's like things like reassembling skeleton, especially since I would have loved to see this at like uncommon, to like have that like sacrifice sub theme in the Rakdos stuff. And you have, so if you have some of the sacrifice stuff, obviously this is very good. But even if you don't, like, it's a 2/1 that keeps coming back, and they have to deal with that. And yeah, I quite like Gutter Bones. Ill-gotten Inheritance. This is a 4-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, Ill-gotten Inheritance deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. You may pay 6 mana, sacrifice it, and it deals 4 damage to target opponent, and you gain 4 life. Now you know me, I love my enchantments that do not affect the board state. But this really does not affect the board state, and it's just too slow. Like, if it was cheaper, I wouldn't mind it, but like if it was like 3 mana, or maybe 1/2 mana. But the fact that is that like, yes, if you have a deck that's really good at gumming up the board, well, like it is inevitability. But I just feel like you're gonna play this and then just get like your face smashed in by cruel and Simic stuff, or flown over the air by like Azorius and Orzhov stuff, and really I just don't think it's gonna work out. Like, it's just too slow, it's too expensive, and yeah. Next we have Noxious Grotesque, which is a 3-mana 2/2 with Death Touch. I mean, it's not bad. It's nothing amazing, but it's not bad. Like, Death Touchers are useful, especially against like a lot of the Gruul stuff, especially against like a lot of even like the evolved Simic stuff. Like, it is on the ground, and that I think is kind of a point against it, but I mean, it's not bad. It makes a lot of the Gruul attacks really awkward, it makes a lot of the Simic attacks really awkward, and yeah. I like Noxious Grotesque. I mean, I'm not huge on it, but I'll stuff 2 to 3 of these in my deck if I want to, if I pick them up. Next up is Orzhov Enforcer, which is a 2-mana 1/2 with Death Touch and Afterlife 1. Now this is a Death Toucher I love. Like, if it was a 2-mana 1/2 with Death Touch, I would honestly play that. Like, yeah, it's a little expensive, but I would play that. And the fact that once it dies, and usually when it like traits for some big thing or even moderately sized thing, you get a spirit after that, is amazing. This is great. I love this. I love my slightly bigger butt typhoid rat that is a ghost friend, or becomes a ghost. Yeah, that's probably closer to it. No. Orzhov Racketeers, which is a 5-mana 3/2, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. And it has Afterlife 2. So overall it's 5/4 worth of stats. But let's be honest, like, by the time we're playing down a 5-drop and swinging in turn 6, this thing is not getting in very easily. That said, it does kind of like have this like weird situation where if they don't have flyer defense, like, yeah, I'll block this and trade with it. But then I have 2 spirits that can like come in, and that's not bad, but I think it's just fine. Also, I'd be like 6 mana limited, like our opponent just doesn't have that many cards left in their hand. So yeah, I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's wonderful either. Next we have Pestilent Spirit, which is a 3/2 Menace Death Touch, and instant sorcery spells you control have Death Touch. Honestly, in limited, you can ignore that second clause, because, well, cool. Let's be honest, like, I guess if you're in Rakdos, it might be useful, like, make your, like, kills, like, your burn spells kill bigger things, but mostly the fact that it's a 3/2 Menace Death Touch, that is a nasty set of conditions. Like, whenever they block this, you're guaranteed a 2-for-1 if they want to kill this thing, and honestly, like, 3-mana 3/2's Menaces are good, and just ST1 Death Touch to that, oh, that's beautiful. You don't even need that second line, just ignore that second line, and that's just still an amazing 3-drop. Next we have Playgroup, which is a 2-mana 2/1, and whenever it becomes blocked, each creature blocking it gets -1/-1 till end of turn. I'm not huge on pikers, like 2-mana 2, or just 2/1s in general are called pikers, but I mean, this is kind of like Ornery Goblin, and like, it'll kill like a spirit that blocks it, it makes it, like, it's a 2-mana 2/1, but it effectively kind of has 2 toughness, and so it's kind of like a bear in that way, and sometimes it'll just kill whatever it does before it even happens. And, you know, I don't mind that at all. Granted, it is only a 2, like, effectively a 2/2 when attacking, but if you need 2-drops, this is a fine 2-drop. But normally I think it will turn out to just be kind of like a bear, but it's still not the worst bear you could have. Next we have Priest of Forgotten Gods, which is a 2-mana 1/2 with tap, sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. You add 2 black, and you draw a card. Okay, so sacrificing 2 other creatures is rough. Like, especially when it's 2 other creatures. And I'm gonna have to go with like the same one that was the 2-mana sacrifice 2 creatures, draw 3 cards, and say that having 2 other creatures to be on the board on what is otherwise, without this ability, this card is bad. Requiring 2 other creatures, and like, that effect when you do have 2 other creatures is very good. But the fact is that a lot of the time you're not gonna have 2 other creatures to sacrifice. You are paying 2 cards, and like, granted, like, you come out 2 for 2 at the exchange, but it's just not likely. I think a similar comparison you could make would be to Whisper Blood Liturgist from Dominaria, which is 4 mana, but they could attack and sacrifice 2 creatures to revive something. But Whisper was like, there was like cards you could do that worked really well, like Chaining Whisper, things like Ravnica Aspire and things like that. You could just start chaining and like doing things like that. This one doesn't have that. Whisper could sack herself. She cannot sack herself. If she could sack herself, I would be much more into this card. But yeah, I just don't feel like this is a card that would be great and limited. If you have a ton of Afterlife cards, like a lot of Afterlife cards in your deck, I could see maybe running this, because if you can consistently get her effect, it's very powerful. But yeah, I'm not gonna be huge on Priest of Forgotten Gods. I just feel like it's way too situational to be really that good and limited. We got Rakdos Trumpeter, which is a 2/1/3 with Menace, and you pay 3 in a red to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. Yeah, I mean, if you're not in Rakdos, this is bad. Like, 2-mana 1/3 with Menace isn't useful. It really just isn't that useful. But I mean, when you're in Rakdos and sometimes like late game, it can become like when you need to and swing it as a 3/3 Menace. But even then, that's still a lot of mana. I like this in Rakdos because it's like a 2-mana 1/3 with Menace is really good at enabling Spectacle. But only the Rakdos deck really wants that. So if you're in Rakdos, I like this. I think this is a real solid 2-drop. And later on it can become a beat or anything, but its primary function is a Spectacle enabler. And if you don't need a Spectacle enabler, it's not that great. If you do, in terms of common 2-drops to enable like your 3-drop Spectacle creatures, Rakdos Trumpeter is very nice. Speaking of Spectacle, we have Spawn of Mayhem, which is a 4-mana 4/4 flying trample with Spectacle for 1 black. Okay, let's just stop there for right now. If it was just 4-mana 4/4 flying trample, I'm in. That is awesome. Like 4-mana 4/4s, I'd be in. 4/4 trample, very in. Flying trample too, yes please. And if you have like, say, like that last creature where like, oh, you got in with your common and now I get to play this turn 3, very nice. And at the beginning of your upkeep, Spawn of Mayhem deals 1 damage to each player. Oh look, it enables all of your other Spectacle cards too. And then if you have 10 or less life, put a +1/+1 counter on Spawn of Mayhem. Like, yes, it has the downside of like, it could potentially be dangerous to you if you're a low life total, but at the same time, you're killing your opponent so fast with this thing. Like, your opponent's gonna be dead so fast with this hits the board, and like, this will just end game so fast. There's a reason it's a mythic. Yeah, no, just very good. One of the best, I think one of the best creatures in the set. Just hands down. You don't need Spectacle to make it good, and Spectacle makes it amazing if you can get out turn 3. And the fact that it also enables all of your other Spectacle shenanigans. Yeah. Next we have Spire Mangler, which is a 3-mana 2/1 with flying and flash. And when it enters the battlefield, target creature with flying you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. honestly, this is real solid. In many ways, you can kind of think of it as it's a 2-mana 2/1 that can with flash and flying. Okay, like 3-mana 2/1 flash flying. I'm not super into that because like spirit tokens just kill this and things like that. You could instead flash it in, give itself +2/+0, and block something and essentially have it breed a deal 4 damage to target attacking creature. Or when you're really offensive and you want to have like your spirit trade with something, you could flash it in and be like, okay, my spirit trades if you're like flying X3 and this thing, and or just flash it end of turn and like you have 2 extra points of damage that they don't know to deal with and able to shoot spectacle stuff. And honestly, like, while all of these modes are only okay, the fact that it's kind of like it's a hidden modal card makes me really like this card. So yeah, I mean, just the flexibility of it is really nice, and it has like a nice range of utilities for what it's doing. Next up is Thirsting Shade, which is a 1-mana 1/1 lifelink. You can pay 3 and a black, or 2 and a black, sorry, 3 total, to give it +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay, so like the most obvious comparison would be Veiled Shade from Guilds, which was the 3-mana 2/2, which you can play 1 and a black to give +1/+1. The fact that this has 1 extra cost to give it +1/+1 is, I think, is a huge detriment against it. Like the fact that it is, yeah, it is cheaper. It also is smaller to begin with, and Veiled Shade was like it was a fine card, but wasn't amazing in Guilds. And I just feel like the addition of lifelink and making it cheaper just doesn't do it any favors. So I'm not huge on Thirsting Shade. So sorry, Thirsting Shade. Undercity Scavenger, which is a 4-mana 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, put 2 +1 counters on it, and then scry 2. Okay, this is one where it has like a sacrifice effect that like scry 2 is almost draw a card. You get a 4-mana 5/5. Okay, I'm more into this. Like, you do want to have the cheap creatures to sacrifice. Like, you want to have afterlife creatures and things like that, or like things you can recur, which like is getting there, but even then it's only fine. So yeah, I'm like, I don't mind this as a sacrifice creature, but it's kind of the same thing as M19, where we have all these really good sacrifice outlets, but not that many great enablers. Undercity's Embrace is a 3-mana instant. Target opponent sacrifice a creature. If you control a creature of power 4 or greater, you gain 4 life. I mean, edict effects aren't bad. Against certain decks like Orzhov or something, you might want to sideboard it out because it can get kind of bad. And you know, sometimes getting extra life on it isn't terrible. So I'd say not bad, but you may want to aggressively sideboard, especially against Orzhov. And then we have Vindictive Vampire, which is a 4-mana 2/3, and with whenever another creature you control dies, it does 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. So it's like a bad Blood Arson effect, but it only affects your creatures that die. And thing is, like, this is another one of those pieces which are like, oh, it's like, ooh, what about this like Aristocrats deck for like the Orzhov deck? But I just haven't, like, I just have my doubts, like, that, like, this itself, like, it's a 4-mana 2/3, which I'm not huge on, and, like, yes, that is a nice effect, and, like, if you can get the sacrifice outlets and things like that, but, like, obviously we haven't looked at, like, a lot of the Orzhov gold cards yet, which I probably should have done first. That would have made more sense to actually, like, do the guild colors and then the monocolored stuff. Oh, well. But, it just doesn't seem like we have all of the pieces. Like, we don't have the token enablers, we don't have the repeatable sack outlets that are, like, that great. And it just feels like it's just a very mediocre Aristocrats deck. And this, again, like, the fact that it's another like, unless you're, like, doing cool stuff with, like, actually killing creatures and things like that, this isn't that great. Like, this isn't what's it called? Thorn Archer from M19. That was a good card because it was a good statted card. The 4-mana 2/3 Death Touch Reach. This is a 4-mana 2/3. That's it. And I just don't see that theme there. I just don't feel like that Orzhov theme is really getting in. Like, Orzhov isn't really looking to be aristocrats really in the set. It's more just my creatures, like, they just incremental grinding out value and eventually kill you in Era Flares. So, yeah, I'm just not huge on that. And that is it for black. And now we move on to red. And now we're starting out with Act of Treason, which is 2 and a red for sorcery. Gain control of target creature you until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Obviously, very, very, very good if you have the outlets. But mainly you actually also want to make sure you have cheap outlets. Like, you'll see this in some of like the Orzhov cards and things like that, but like a lot of the cards are really like, okay, when like, oh, that 4-mana creature, you can sacrifice a creature. Like, if you want to use Act of Treason as like a removal spell and get that value, that's 7 mana. And it's kind of like M19 where if you have those outlets and like this card, like this becomes amazing. But definitely I wouldn't aggressively pick up Acts of Treason until you have those. That said, Act of Treason also isn't a terrible spectacle enabler, because it takes a blocker out of the way and gives you another attacker, and oftentimes you're not really going to trade away to kill their Act of Treason creature. So it can also have that function in Rakdos decks. So I think this card won't be bad, but it won't be the powerhouse it was in M19 until we see some of the, unless you have those like good enablers that for like 1 to 2 mana you can sacrifice their creature. Next up we have Amplifier, which is a 4-mana 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Until your next turn, Amplifier's base power becomes twice that card's power, and its base toughness becomes twice that power's card's toughness. Put the revealed card on the bottom of your library in any order. Okay, so it's a 4/4. That, say like the smallest creature you have, like, is a 2/2, like, and that's not really small, or like, okay, like, let's just go like the smallest card you have, like, on average, like, you would get with 2/2. Sometimes you'll whiff and you'll hit like your 1/2 utility creature. But say like you hit a 2/2. That means like the turn after this comes out, it is essentially you're attacking with a 5/5, or you're attacking with a 4/4. Which is fine. And sometimes you'll get a bigger creature, but I don't know. The fact that it just doesn't work on the defensive. Oh wait, no, it is. It is until your next turn. I thought it was just during that turn. I don't think that's bad. Like, at bare minimum, it becomes like a 4/4. Like, it doesn't really block while the turn comes down. But if you reveal like a big gruel creature or something like that, it just becomes real nice. So I don't think it's bad. Like, I think it's actually quite solid. Yeah. It's weird. It's cool. I don't mind it. Like, obviously you do want to have big creatures in your deck, so you're prioritizing having like nice like gruel or some of the bigger Rakdos cards, but yeah. Next we have Burn Bright, which is 2 and a red for an instant. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. I'm not big on this. Like, it's not, as a combat trick, it doesn't help your creatures survive any combat. Neither Gruul nor Rakdos will really go wide. I'm just not big on Burn Bright. It's just not what either of those decks are looking to do. Burning Tree Vandal. Now, this is the first instance of a Riot, what I think is honestly the best mechanic in this set. Which is when it enters battlefield, you either gets a +1/+1 counter or haste. So this is a 3-mana 2/1 with Riot, and whenever it attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So it's a 3-mana 3/2, or sometimes it'll be a 3-mana 2/1 with haste, and you can judge the board and stuff. I feel like in limited, unless you're like, oftentimes I feel like you'll be choosing the counter and not the haste unless you want to get in. Like the haste is also nice if you want to like enable spectacle and things like that. But like, you know, like if a 3-mana 3/2 that whenever it attacks, and like sometimes you can get it immediately if you need to, you get to discard, you get to rummage. Honestly, I don't mind that at all. Like, obviously rummaging isn't as good as looting, but it's just real solid one. Next up we have a Clade of Calamity, which is a 2-mana enchantment. Whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, this deals 1 damage to that player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. Thing is, we have, like, with the exception of spirit tokens, there isn't an overabundance of power 1 creatures. Which makes me like, this is a cool enchantment. But also the coolest deck it's in an Orzhov touch that's splashing for Mardu. And then that's actually kind of like, is this cool thing. But at the same time, I feel like this is just, it's too janky. Like, I love this card, but it's too janky. Next we have Clamor Shaman, which is a 3-mana 1/1 with Riot. So kind of for Riot, for like, just think of them as like 1 with the +1/+1 counter, and sometimes it has the haste utility. But whenever it attacks, target creature an opponent controls cannot block this turn. I think this card is amazing and very good. Like, just like, it essentially shuts down a blocker, and like, I mean, Gruul, you're turning creature sideways, you're getting in every turn. And even Rakdos really kind of likes this effect because it helps get in things and enable your other things, and just being able to shut down a blocker each turn is a very powerful effect. Dagger Caster, which is a 4-mana 2/3, and when it enters battlefield, it does 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. I think it's a sideboard card. Like, obviously it wrecks Orzhov, but and it's something that also, like, especially Rakdos I think will want to, because I think Rakdos is gonna have a lot of trouble against the like the spirits and spirit tokens and whatnot. But it is a 4-mana 2/3. Yeah, it enables a little spectacle, but at the same time, you're already paying 4 mana, so you're not actually like getting in that much of like extra spectacle cost. But it's kind of like bringing in a sideboard. If your opponent does have a lot of X1s or Afterlife cards, then it becomes very good. Next we have Deface, which is a 1 red 4/1. Destroy target artifact, or destroy target creature with Defender. It's a sideboard card. Like, if they have an artifact you need to deal with, fine. Very rarely will you need to kill the card of Defender. Yeah. Electro Dominance, which is X red for an instant. Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target. You may cast a card of confirm cost EX or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. This is an amazing card. Like, it's very good. Like, X red deal X damage to any target. That would be one of the best red cards in the set. And you also get to cast a free like spell from it. That is a very good card. It's just real nice. And at instant speed, it lets you cast a card at a sorcery speed card at instant speed if you want to as well. So yeah. Yeah, Feral Maka, which is a 2-mana 2/2, but it's a cat. So +1 point because it's a cat. It's okay, it's a bear. You're not happy to play these, but you're fine. Flames of the Razeboar, which is a 6-mana instant. Flames of the Razeboar deals 4 damage to target creature and opponent controls. Then it deals 2 damage to each other creature that opponent controls if you control a creature of power 4 or greater. Okay, if you don't control a power 4 or greater, it deals 4 damage to target creature for 6 mana. I'm not into that. That's just way too expensive. If you do, I really like that. I like it a bit more. It's like if you are that like Gruul deck with the big Gruul creatures and things like that, and by turn 6 you'll often will. And it is at instant speed, which is also real nice. So I think all that combined, I like this card, but you really do need to have that critical mass of creatures power 4 or greater. Next we have Gates Ablaze, which is 2 in a red for sorcery. Gates Ablaze deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates you control. Honestly, this is just asking too many things to go right. A, you need to have gates in play, which you can prioritize and things like that. B, you have to have, like, your opponent, like, you have to be profitable in that, where, like, you have to have, like, high toughness creatures where your opponent has low toughness creatures. If it was, like, if it deals up to X damage, where X is the number of gates you control, I'd be a little more into it. But the fact that you just don't have control over it makes me not like it as much. It's just way too situational. Next we have Gore Clan Wrecker, which is a 4-mana 2/3 with Right and Menace. And you know, like, it's a 4-mana 3/3 with Menace. It's not terrible, and some just have Haste, which means it's a little bit better than a 4/4 with the 3/3 for 4 with Menace. It's fine. It's not amazing for a 4-drop, but it's not bad. Next we have Goblin Gathering, which is a 2-mana, or 2 in a red for sorcery. Create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to 2 plus the number of cards named Goblin Gathering in your graveyard. I think this is a really cool card. Like, okay, if you just have 1 in your deck, okay, if you played it and you only have 1, 3-mana to make 2 1/1s, okay, it's a bad dragon fodder. But, But if you say, once you have more than 1, it's just value. Like, as soon as you have, like, if you've cast your second one and you have another one in your graveyard, getting like 3 1/1s for 3 mana is great, and it's only up from there. Yeah, no, I think this is just a very good card. It does make a lot of, like, kind of like the sacrifice. This is like one of those cards I'd like to see more of for, like, that sacrifice theme in Rakdos. So, yeah. Okay, we got Gravelhide Goblin, which is 1 in a red for a 2/1. With 3 in a green, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. I don't mind this in a Gruul deck. Like, it's a piker, which isn't amazing. But late game, be able to attack as a 4/3, or also block as a 4/3, isn't bad. And I mean, especially Gruul does tend to, like, dump their hand and have nothing to do with their mana. And this is something to do with their mana. And I don't think it's great, but it'll be a solid 2-drop in the Gruul decks. Immolation Shaman, which is 2 for a 1/3, which is whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land that isn't a mana ability, it deals 1 damage to that player. And you may pay 3 red to give it +3/+3 and gain miss until end of turn. Yeah, I don't mind this. Like, it's like 2 mana 1/3, which is fine. It's nothing great, but it's not like that. Those stats aren't. I'm not upset by those stats. That first ability, the main thing it hits is, like, guild mages is, like, the main thing. It, like, and will hit some situational other things, and you might get a few damage out of that. And then late game, turning it into a 4/6 menace, that's a real creature. So yeah, I like Immolation Shaman. Light Up the Stage. We have a 2 and a red for sorcery. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your turn, you may play those cards. It also has Spectacle for 1. This is one of those where it's like, you really want to be hitting the Spectacle cost, because you have to still pay the cost for the ghost cards, and if you don't have the Spectacle enablers, this becomes really awkward, because it's like that impulse draw, where if you have like the ability to enable those spectral things, and you can play lands off this, so remember to not play a land before you cast this. Words mean things. Also, I also should note that it is until the end of your next turn. So it's like if you're in this, you play this on your turn, you have like a full turn cycle. So like you can like have like, man, I just read that and realized that. So you do actually have a fair amount of time before Light Up the Stage, like, those cards go away. But at the same time, you do want to be running this X-Roll, and actually now knowing that it is until the end of your next turn makes me like it a lot more, even if you don't have the Spectral enablers, but obviously it is best if you do have the Spectral cost. But otherwise, I don't mind that at all, because then it kind of just becomes a red divination. Next we have Mirror Match, which is 6-mana enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you won, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those creatures gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of your next end step. Okay. This card, I think, is not very good in Limited. It is a 6-mana enchantment that does not fork the board state. You most of the time will be better off running a 6-drop creature. I will pick this way too many times and jam it into every single deck I drafted in, and I will love it every single time. It's just such a fun card. Like, I don't care if it's good, it's like that exciting, the fact that it's like, oh yes, I can get this, like the coin flip and all that, and you know me, I love my like expensive red enchantments that do not affect the board state. This card was like made for me. This is the only reason that these kind of enchantments is what redeems red for me. Love this. But yeah, so, yeah, but most of the time I think you're better off if it's just like a 6-drop creature, but I do really like it. Next we have Rixmadi Reveler, which is a 2-mana 2/2 with Spectacle for 2 black-red, so this is one of those with a higher Spectacle cost. When it enters battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. But if you drew its Spectacle cost was paid, instead discard your entire hand and then draw 3 cards. It's a 2-mana 2/2 that lets you like filter out your draws, that lets you even out your mana if you like are flooded from your opening hand, or it lets you keep a little bit more of like a sketchier hands and things like that. And like late game, if you have that Spectacle enabler, those Spectacle enablers, this just becomes a real solid thing. But honestly, even without the if you're playing like Gruul and you don't have the Spectacle enablers, I think this is still fine. So yeah, I like Rixmadi Reveler quite a bit. Next we have Rebel Reading, which is a 4-mana, destroy target land, scry 2. There are no lands worth destroying in this format for 4 mana. Do not play this card. Rebel Belt Recluse, which is a 5-mana 6/5 that attacks each combat with Able. I don't mind at all. Like, oh no, the 6/5 wants to attack in return. Whatever shall I do? What else are you doing with the 6/5? You're turning it sideways. Yeah. No, that's getting a lot of things, so yeah, I don't mind Rebel Belt Recluse at all. Rumbling Ruin. This is a 6-mana 6/6. When it enters battlefield, count the number of +1/+1 counters on creatures you control. Creatures your opponents control cannot, with power less than or equal to that number, can't block this turn. Granted, this is most me going with Riot. Okay, it is a 6-mana 6/6. Which is just fine. Like, that's not bad stats at all. Like, Colossal Dreadmaw is a good card for a reason. And why it hasn't been printed in a few sets, just its power level is way too high. And the fact that also it's like, if you have like a bunch of Riot creatures, kind of like a in-sweep, or like, okay, I have like 2 to 3 creatures with like Riot on, with like counters from Riot on, and then I slam this down and get to give a huge strike, and still have a 6/6 left over the end. Like, most of the time I think I'll be playing this as a 6/6, but also just gonna like get some nice push-through damage. I think it's real solid for like the Gruul deck. If you're Rakdos and you're not really having counters, you want this a bit less, but you don't mind it as a 6-drop. Next up we have Scorch Mark, which is 1 and a red for an instant. It deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature dies this turn, exile it instead. It's a 2-mana shock that doesn't go face and then exiles. It's a really bad Magma Spray. Magma Spray was an amazing card in Amonkhet Limited because it was the format of small creatures that would get in and ruin your day and stuff like that. This I just don't think is that good. Like, a lot of the creatures we see, like, have, like, 3 toughness or more and, like, a lot of things you care about. Like, yes, it will be good against some decks, but it's one of those, you'll play, like, a few, like, 1 to 2 in your deck if you have them, and maybe you'll bring in some more from the sideboard or side bet out based on your opponent's deck, but in draft and stuff, I would not take these highly. I just don't think they're good. Next we have Skargan Hellkite, which is a 5-mana 4/4 with flying and riot. So it is effectively a 5-mana 5/5 flyer, which is very good. But you can pay, or also sometimes it's just a 4/4 flying with haste, which is also real solid. You can pay 4 mana to have it deal 2 damage as you choose, divided among one or two creatures. Active ability only if it has a +1/+1 counter on it. This is very good. Okay, so it's a 5-mana 5/5 that normally you're probably just gonna have it enter as a 5/5 unless you're gonna like kill your opponent right then and there. That later on you can just start spending 4 mana to shock people. This is busted. Like, this is another one of probably one of the best. Like, it reminds me, it's kind of like a fixed Glorybringer while still also being very good. Next we have Skewer the Critics, which is a 2 and a red with Spectacle for 1 red. It deals 3 damage to any target. It seems real good. Like, okay, sometimes it's just a Open Fire, which was a fine card, and if you have Spectacle enablers, or if you're Gruul and you just turn the creature sideways, it's Sorcery Speed Lightning Bolt. Fun fact, Sorcery Speed Lightning Bolt is what they call a good card. Yeah, no, I think this is fine. This is real solid. It's very good. I think it's one of the better like red cards in the set. Smelt Ward Ignis is a 2-mana 2/1, and you pay 2 and a red to sacrifice it. Gain control of target creature with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Active ability only when you could cast a sorcery. So it's a 2-mana 2/1, which is a creature I don't really want for a bad that you can pay more mana to give it a bad act of treason, which I also don't really want. I just don't like this card. I just don't think it's that great. It's just way too many conditionals, and yeah. Spear Spewer, which is 1 red for an 0/2 with Defender, and maybe tap it and deal 1 damage to each player. If you are a Rakdos deck and needed rage, what's it called? Spectacle enablers. I keep calling raged, but I think it's not the worst for if you just kind of need a spectacle enabler. But if you don't, I don't think this card is good and not very useful at all. Like, Gruul definitely does not want this card. Spike Wheel Acrobat, which is a 4-mana 5/2. I'm not huge in 4-mana 5/2s, but it is Spectacle for 2 and a red. Do I like 3-mana 5/2s? Not bad, but you need to have consistent sources of Spectacle enablers. Like, I'll play 3-mana 3/2s, and 3-mana 5/2 is very good. I don't want to pay 4 mana for a creature with only 2 toughness, though. So, like, if you have the Spectacle enablers, I like it, But if you don't, I would not play this. But even then, even with the Spectral Enablers, I don't think it's a high choice. It's just fine. Next we have Storm Strike, which is 1 red for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gain Flare Strike until end of turn. Scry 1. I don't mind this. Like, it's a combat trick that will often cause you to just win combat a lot of the time. And the Scry 1 is nice. Like, it's not draw a card, but it's a nice addition. So, yeah. I don't mind it as a combat trick, but it is a combat trick. Tin Street Dodger, which is 1 red for a 1/1 of haste. It cannot be blocked this turn, and you can pay 1 red to have it not unblockable this turn except by creatures with Defender. Again, if it's actually a real solid Spectral Enabler, but outside of the Rakdos deck, like, Gruul does not want this card. Like, oh no, you have a 1/1 unblockable that you have to pay for every turn. I don't care. Rakdos doesn't mind that if you have the spectral cards you want to set off, but unless you need that, you don't want it. But it is a solid enraged, or not enraged. I keep calling it enraged Spectral Enabler. And that is it for Black and Red. I hope you enjoyed this version of this episode, and next episode we're going to move on to Green and Lands. We're going to talk about the best card, best color. Yeah. And then after that, the last 3 videos we'll be talking about the actual multicolor cards for all the guilds. So, until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a wonderful night. And as always, may our story smile upon you.